Alright, it's a video. Hey, what's up? It's Noel. Heading back out to the garage today to do some more work on the project car. And we're gonna be tackling that rear squat. Just went and got some replacement original springs to get the back end off the ground because it's sitting way too low. I mean, maybe someday it'll be low again, but right now, with the front up like that, at original height, and the back down low, it's just dragging and banging around too much. So, plan for today, gonna be get these new old springs and slap them on the back. Gonna do a couple other things as well, just some basic upkeep. So let's get started.
Alright, busting out the homemade ramps because right now the car is too low for me to be able to get the jack underneath. Am I the only one that freaks out anytime I try to pull a car up onto a ramp? Anyway, got it up there and get the back end of the car up in the air so we can get to work.
So the car is up in the air now, and the plan today is going to be to pull off these struts and those springs which were cut by the previous owner, and we're going to put some factory length springs back on so that the car isn't dragging all over the place. Other thing I'm going to do is put the cover back over this. This has a protective cover just so that this stuff isn't getting beat up by rocks and stuff. So we'll put that back in as well to keep our fuel line, our fuel filler tube, nice and protected. We've got one 17mm bolt here. Pop that off. 3 up here on the top. Pop those off and you should be free to go.
Gonna pull those 4 bolts off there, get that pulled out pretty quick and easy. Wasn't able to get the impact gun on that last 3rd bolt on the top, so end up having to use a manual ratchet.
These struts are totally effed. I probably should get new struts, but I'm probably just gonna switch over to coilovers anyway. So for now we'll just settle for having a ride height that geez, look at that. Yeah, those are done. Since we're going to be switching over to coilovers anyway, and this is just a temporary fix, we're going to roll around on the blown struts, but at least the springs being back to factory height will help a little bit. At least I won't be crashing into everything on the road. So pop this off. I don't need to use a spring compressor right now because obviously there's no need. But if you are replacing actual OEM length springs, definitely use a spring compressor so you're not killing yourself and other things around you. 14mm bolts come right off.
So there you go. Previous springs on there were cut pretty low. He cut them by half, pretty much. The original length is 10 coils, and he had them cut down to 5, which to me was just too low. It was back of the car with the blown struts especially was just banging into too much stuff. And with the front end sitting up like that, it was just even worse. The trim was all out of whack. So plan for right now just to kind of keep the car more trimmed and from beating the crap out of everything. I'm just going to put these original length springs back on. Car's certainly not going to ride great, but at least it won't be riding terrible and I won't be crashing into stuff when I'm going down the road. So putting the Full length springs back on here. One thing as I'm working on this, if you've never compressed a spring before, obviously be very careful while you're doing it. And then as you're compressing and then releasing these springs, the goal here is you want to go side to side. Don't compress all the way on one side and then do the other one, or you're going to bow out your spring. It's going to be a real pain to work with. So as you're putting the compressors on and then pulling them off, make sure you're working both sides there evenly, make your life a little easier. So there you go, we got that all put together. Now we can slap that back in. Then as we are tightening everything down here back to place, the insulator to body nut, you want those at about 29 foot-pounds. And then the fixing bolt on the lower end, about 58 foot-pounds. So you don't need to go too crazy with these things. And another thing to remember is be sure to put some grease there on your lower fixing bolt, just so that's not squeaking around, and you should be off to the races.
All right, I got to run to the storage unit because I don't have the screws for my for the fuel tank filler tube. So I've got the cover, but I don't have the screws for it. They're over in the storage unit. So off to the storage unit we go. Storage unit. Storage thing. Just cover the floor. Key. Take everything. Wrap this thing. Keys. Extra parts. Take all this. You remember we put half your stuff. Like, no, actually, it's actually that. Tank fill tube. All right. I returned with my bag of conveniently labeled screws. Tank fill tube cover. This is why I label things. So many bolts to choose from. It's a wealth of bolts.
So after some struggling to get that back in, really just bolts right back up.
Back to your home. Go back to where you came from, you.
Way to go. All right, that's done. Now moving underneath the car. Project here is going to be removing the back portion of the parking brake cable assembly. So there's going to be a couple clips here. You just want to pull those out. A pair of pliers worked pretty well. The reason I'm pulling this out is because for whatever reason the parking brake was locking up the rear brakes, and they just wouldn't release when I was driving. So if I ever pulled the parking brake, they were just locked on, and you had to really go on there and detach them from the rear calipers to get them to release. So the parking brake essentially was not functional if I wanted to go anywhere. I'm not quite sure what the cause for that was. I haven't cracked that yet. But as it was, I had the parking brake, rear connectors just dangling off the car by the wheels, getting all kinds of beat up. So for the moment, my plan is to just drop this off the car until I can circle back around and figure out what's going on with that. Or, just upgrade the brakes anyway, because that is something I plan to do a fancy race car brake upgrade on this car someday. So for now, we're kind of doing a bunch of temporary fixes on the car. We're just going to pull this cabling out of the equation. So once you got those that all pulled out, you just need to release these couple mounting points here on both sides, and you can fish that cabling out of the way.
This all comes off. You see this pin here? So I just decided to put the little cotter pin back in there, just to hold this from rattling around too much, so I'm not pulling the rest of that out. See that right there? I hope you can. Okay, cam. Action cam. And there you go. Parking brake. Parking brake. Should be free.
This one been on there for a long time, so it was a little bit stuck. Had to give it a good whack with the hammer. I don't know, sometimes you just need to whack things off. What can I say? Alright, so the rear parking brake cable section
has been removed from under the car. Wasn't functional anyway, but at least now it's not dangling by the wheels and getting beat up while I'm driving down the road. Maybe someday I can find a way to get that functional. I know with a lot of the aftermarket brake kits, it's kind of a lost feature, but it's pulled out and it's not getting beat on anymore as I'm driving down the road, so at least that's good. The cover is back over the filler tube, so that's good. This spring is done. Now we'll just go back around to the passenger side, knock this side out, and we'll call that a day.
So for the last phase of today's project, just gonna again swap out the spring on the driver's side, and we'll call that good for now and move on to a couple other things. Yeah, I can see that those brakes obviously are terrible and need some love. That is another project here coming up, so we'll rebuild the brakes in the back of the car. Hopefully give us something nice and reliable and safe to go down the road with. Alright, so there you go. That little project is checked off for the time being. We got the car back up at more or less the factory ride height, which will hopefully go a long way towards keeping the back end of the car from getting all beat up. With the cut springs combined with the blown struts in the back, it was just a terrible ride. I mean, the ride's not going to be really much better anyway, but at least the springs will be keeping us a little bit off the ground from smashing into everything and potholes and stuff. This was really more about trying to keep the car functional as we continue to check things off and work on it. So we've got it lifted up. It'll ride crappily, but at least less crappily than it was before, and I can focus on some other things that I want to check off before I go spend a whole ton of money on a nice suspension upgrade. So there you go. Quick little project. Hopefully this was helpful. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you next time.